Hey, what's up guys? I'm coming to you today with an Armada video talking about some tactics and formation flying. This is what I call the Conga line, and I'm basically going to talk about how to fly in formation using what I call the Conga line, and it's basically flying your ships kind of in a line, exercising their side arcs, and trying to create basically a kill zone where any ship that enters in has every single one of your ships being able to shoot on it without any one of your ships obstructing the other ships. So think of everybody flying in a line and you come in and then everybody's side arc gets to shoot at you. And that's basically the idea of this formation. I'm going to talk about a rebel version of it, I'm going to talk about an imperial version of it, some of the differences between them, and the way some of the lessons learned that I've found, and I'm going to show you some setups and some demos. So here it goes. Alright, so the first type of Conga line I want to talk about is the Akbar Conga line, and one that's commonly seen is with two Assault Frigate Mark IIs and a Home 1, or something like this. It can be multiple Assault Frigate Mark IIs, you can have 3 of them, something like that, but in this case we will set it up like this. And the idea here is that you keep them all kind of slow, and this ship can only go speed 2 anyway, but you kind of more or less just go straight and move slowly, creating a big, bubble of death. So any ship, any fast little CR-90 that wants to buzz in here now ends up being in range here, here, and here at the same time, and that's kind of what you want to do, and that's the idea behind a Conga line. You keep them all moving along the same path, and when you're placing your objectives, you make sure that you don't put them in the path that you want to go. If your opponent places objectives over here, then you just move all this to the other side of the map and do it in a different place, or anywhere generally that you can. In the case of doing an Akbar Conga line, it is okay to try to go up the middle of the map. It's just much harder to do that because it's generally easier to skirt the edges or slightly go in. But if you're able to maneuver and get through the middle, which can be hard, especially with if you have an MC-80 because of its slower speed and limited maneuverability. But if you're able to go up the middle, you run the possibility of doing the Akbar slash, and so then you can, I guess I'm going rebel versus rebel here, which probably doesn't look that good. So that's definitely one type of Conga line. One thing I would suggest, though, a pitfall of doing the Conga line is having your ships too close together. I saw somebody fly like this one time, and one problem that they would run into is now all their ships had to activate in a very, very specific order. I knew this ship had to go first, and I knew this ship had to go second, and I knew this ship had to go last, because otherwise, boom, you're going to bump, and I would have loved that. Now, of course, if you find yourself in this predicament, yes, you're going to be predictable, but if you can afford to bump just to throw your opponent off, sometimes you may need to do that. But now I'm getting outside the scope of this video. But the point of this setup here is I would generally suggest start them a little farther apart, if you can, so that you can, basically go far enough that you can do a speed 2 straight if you have to. You're not always going to be, or if you're starting at speed 1, start it long enough that you can at least do a speed 1, and then even if your speed is at speed 2, you keep a nav token banked, so you can always reduce speed to speed 1 and not bump. You can do that. Another thing is to be slightly offset. If you are slightly offset on a slight angle, you can generally still keep those same arcs, and somebody over here will get that shot, this shot, and that. Well, this one's slightly out of range, but at least two of the 3, or if they're here then they get all 3. But the idea here is that nobody's going to bump each other. So when possible, if you're going to do a Conga line, try to be slightly offset. Now I'm going to show you my favorite new type of Conga line, and that is using my favorite new ship, the Architons. And I'm going to use a couple of these guys. I've got 4 of them out right now, and I've been flying these guys a lot. And what I like to do is I like to run the Architons in a Conga line, and what I do is I stagger them. And I never line them all up, even though this would be glorious. Like, nobody wants to come into here because this is the kill zone. All of this is the kill zone. Especially like the last way I ran these guys was all with enhanced armament and Vader, and it was just a sick amount of dice with lots of rerolls, and I loved it. And people did not like to play against it, so I might not do that all the time. But the problem is you can't do this, right? This ship in particular has a very, very wacky maneuver dial. They get 2 clicks on the end, but they're stuck going straight, so they're basically forced into a very wide turn type of mechanic. So what I set up is I staggered them like this. So I still had them all in a tight, more or less a pretty tight formation for starting out. And let me actually lay my maneuver template down here. All right, or not my rangefinder. Okay, so something like this is how I would generally start. And if I had another ship also, I'd have it either over here or over here, depending on how close to the edge I want it to be. Sometimes if it's a lifeboat, I would have it just skirt the very, very edge. Or if it's a support flotilla or something like that, I could have it close behind, and then it will catch up. And the idea is once they eventually turn, he'll hug the outside and be behind them and provide support. But one of the things I think is very, very important for this is you don't have to put them quite this far apart. You do kind of want your range 3 from the inside guys not to, to have as much overlap as possible with the range 3 from the forward guys. But the idea here is you also want them to go straight. As straight as possible to kind of keep the formation. What you don't want to do is have one guy at speed 1 in the back here and do this, and then these other guys are speed 2 and 3. You want to keep them as close to the same speed as you can, and if your farthest forward one starts out a little too fast, then slow it down after it gets out of the way. And it may need to, your front one may need to be the fastest one, at least for the first turn, just to make room to turn around and make that big wide arc. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is if you're going to do a conga line, don't start too close to the edge, because this is a recipe for disaster. In playtesting, in setting up, I almost did this one time where I set up my staggered line like this. Now, this guy right here is almost on the edge, and the problem is, as soon as I do that hard turn, that puts his back corner off the map. So you have to keep them about, for safety's sake, I'd say about at least 2 objective tokens worth inside the map. All right, so that's like, or at least a thumb and a half inside, if you're going to be doing the hard turns. Now you can go a little closer if you're going to do only a 1-click, and then you'll be safe. See, a 1-click will keep you just barely on the map, but a 2-click will put you off. So you have to be more than an objective token's length away from the edge if you want to do a hard 2. And one of the things you may absolutely have to do is do a hard 2. Now, setting up staggered like this allows you to counter or to react to a lot of different things, because the way to beat a setup like this or any type of conga line side arc formation is to get in front of it. So suppose I've got, we'll say some assault frigates, all right, and they set up like that. So I'm going to get them on camera here. Let's say they set up to come in this way, and that's now I have 2 options. I can keep going straight, which will generally work, but if I get too close to the edge, I might not have room. And so if so I have options to either go straight, or if they're set up in different, like if he's too far ahead of me and I'm not going to be able to pass him, if he's going to be able to get in front of me, he'll win. And if they split up, then I can turn in early and get my own version of the Akbar slash on them. But generally, a formation like this can only really reliably get one side arc, but you want all of them to get it. It's rare that you can get both side arcs. For the Architect specifically, though, you have a much better chance because it's a small base ship with a tighter front. If you can get onto a larger ship and then get both side arcs at the same time, because doing that, I've got this side and that side. It's very rare to really be able to pull that off, but the few times, if you ever get that, even if you lose the game, that's still going to count as a victory because you pulled off a very difficult maneuver and got 2 side arcs on the same ship with an Architens, which would be amazing. But basically, the moral of the story here is stagger your ships so that they don't bump into each other. Make sure whatever your starting speed is, if you need to, for some reason, start out at speed 3, then you need to pace them even farther apart. If you're starting out at speed 1, you can afford to be a little bit closer, but generally speed 1 is, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of speed 1. I prefer to go a little bit faster, and depending on which commander you're using, if you're using Gergerod, you never want to be speed 1 unless you really need to slow down, because at speed 2 you get to fully take advantage of him and do your super hard turns. But yeah, that's basically it. I usually put them about a full ship length apart, and I stagger them, and I have them about 2 objective tokens length from each other, and this way they never bump. I mean, and you'll have to practice flying a little bit. Architens specifically are tougher to get used to because they fly differently than almost every other ship, and they're one of the only Imperial ships right now that you can really count on the big side arc with. So something I want to see in the future is more Imperial side arc ships, but the Rebels have a lot more stuff that can do that. And they can do it even at close ranges too with MC30s. The only problem is, you're not going as slow and you're not playing the same thing, because with MC30s you're flying them in to get right alongside the big ship. So you're taking your conga line straight at the enemy, and so the tactics end up becoming very different and the builds end up becoming very different. And so while you may fly it similar, the whole idea of skirting the edges is not what you're going to do with a ship like that. You're more likely to do that with one of these guys, and with basically these 2 types of ships. I mean, these will work with it, but these 2 are more likely to do the Rebel version of the Conga line. So let me know if you have any questions on it. Alright guys, so thanks for watching the Conga line video. Let me know what you think. Did you find it helpful at all? Have you done something similar to this? And do you have any additional lessons learned that maybe I didn't cover that you think would be helpful? I would love to hear about them. So thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe. It really helps me out. Like this video if you liked it, and leave me a comment, and we'll talk. Are you guys excited for Star Wars Celebration? It's like 1 day away, and so much news is going to come out. So I'm really excited about that. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.